Welcome to this video regarding version control for PowerBI. To be clear, there is no integrated version control system for PowerBI, but what we can do is to use Git to version PowerBI files. And I want to show you how this can be done. I'm working here on a Windows 10 virtual machine which has installed PowerBI, and we have now to install some additional tools. In particular, we are going to install Visual Studio Code, which will be our version control management tool if you want so, and we are going to install Git on this machine. So let's get started with Visual Studio Code. This is a very lightweight IDE that can be used for different things. I like it to use it for some small development purposes, to edit files, configurations and so on. So I want to create a desktop icon and I want to add it to the context menu so you can open a folder directly in VS Code. VS Code is very easy to use, so it can access a folder and use it like a project folder. And let's start it, and yes, a welcome screen. Because I don't like the dark theme, I'm going to use the good old classic bright Visual Studio design. So VS Code is installed. Next comes Git. You can find all these installation files in the web and they are free to use. And I'm going to install everything here with defaults, but I'm going to use Visual Studio Code as a default editor because I'm familiar with VS Code, or more familiar than the other tools that were provided here. Default, and here we go. And now that Git is installed, we have to do some configurations. In particular, I'm going to provide my username and my email. So from the start menu, you see we have now some Git stuff here, and I'm going to config global and provide my username, and the same for my email address. And now we are done with the basic configuration of Git. So let's turn our interest to PowerBI, and I have downloaded a demo report from Microsoft that you may know. It's a sales and returns. So a very nice, bright report. And here it is. And what we can do now, it is still August, we have to enable a preview feature. So from Files, Options, we're going to the preview features, and here we have Power BI project save options. So what this does, when you have a Power BI report, this is typical one file, and with the project options, it is going to split this Power BI file into a report folder and its files, and a model folder with its files. Let's have a look how this is done. So from File, Save As, I'm changing to Power BI project file, and I'm creating here a new folder for my Power BI project and simply call it Power BI, and I'm going to save the report in this type in this folder. Let's have a look. So from documents, Power BI, now this is this Power BI project structure. You see we have here the report, and we have a dataset folder and a report folder. And in the report folder we have a JSON file that defines the report layout, and we have a model file as well. That's a model BIM. Now we can open this project in Power BI Desktop by double-clicking on this report file here, and we can work in Power BI Desktop like we've done it also years before, so there is no problem. You see, it looks the same. It has just splitted the files underneath. Okay. Now, next step, we want to put this structure here under version control. How can we do this? This is very simple. So from Power BI, I will right click, and from the context menu, I'm using Open in VS Code. Yes, of course, I trust everything. And now, as you can see, we have this folder structure here in VS Code with all its files. And on the left side, we have this version control tab. And the first thing that we want to do is to initialize the repository and provide some useful command here. Call it start. Git uses a local repository, so you can change and modify the files locally, and it also supports to publish it to, let's say, DevOps, for example, so to an online service that is hosting it, where other developers can also download the files and use it on their machine. So you have a local repository, you edit it locally, and when you have done what you need to do, you're pushing it online. Let's see how this can be done. So now that this is under version control, I'm going to minimize VS Code here. And let's say we have a requirement from our customer that the first page should be deleted, and we need an additional measure or whatever. We're going to edit the file like we would do anyway. So I'm going to delete this here. And from the sales, I'm going to add a new measure. Call it sum, and let's sum up the amount. So it doesn't care, just to have some changes on this report and save. Now when we go back to VS Code, you see that the version control tab has identified changes, so something has been deleted, the report JSON has been modified, and the model BIM has been modified. Let's have a look at the model BIM, and you see in the model file we have now a new measure defined. That's my sum, the sum over the amount from the customer. And in the report JSON that defines the report layout, every line that you see here on the right has some changes. Something has changed, something is more, something is different, something has disappeared. So this defines how the report looks like. Now that we are happy with our changes, we can commit it locally and say this was requirement 1. And it has been checked in. If you want to know what has changed, you can go to the folder here, to the files view, and let's say from the dataset folder to the model BIM, and from the timeline you see the changes, and you see, okay, with this requirement 1, this has changed, a new measure has been added to the model file. Now in the next step we want to integrate this with DevOps, and to do so you need a DevOps instance. You can create a free version for some users, and if you need more, you have to buy licenses, but we can go for a free version. Let's close this here. And from my DevOps instance, I'm creating a new project. Call it PowerBI version control system, whatever. And there's one important step. You have to use Git as version control system, of course, and not Team Foundation. And from the template, I'm going for basic. Choose something else if you have more sophisticated requirements. Now let's create this project. This takes a few seconds. And in the next step, we have to add our local repository with the repository that is now here in DevOps. So from repos here, you see we have this URL. I'm going to copy this URL, go back to VS Code, go to my version control tab, and from this point here, under remote, add remote, and I have to provide the URL first and give it a name. That's my DevOps, and this will ask for credentials. Yes, it's me. And now my local repository is connected to my DevOps repository, and I can publish my work. And now when we go back to our DevOps instance, to the repos, you see now this folder structure with the files are here in DevOps. So like initially said, this can be used in a way that you have maybe a second developer that can also connect with his local repository to this instance, download this report, make its necessary changes, fulfill the custom requirements, and so in this way, in theory, multiple Power BI developers could work on one report. I hope this was interesting for you, and I would be happy if you leave a thumbs up. And if you have any questions, please make a comment to the video or write me an email. Thanks for watching and good luck with Power BI.